In the Renaissance, people claimed that they discovered the ancient Greeks and that they rediscovered their wisdom, and I tell you, this is absolutely wrong. What influenced our current culture is not the genuine interpretation of the Greeks, which are considered, or who are considered to be our fathers, but it is a wrong interpretation that has influenced the Renaissance, that has influenced the Age of Illumination, so it was a wrong interpretation.
I would like to introduce to you Professor Peter Hubral.
Yes, I'm very happy. Thank you very much that you invited me.
You're welcome.
And I feel also honored that I can publish now some books in your publishing house. And it is, of course, something unusual that I publish. First of all, I like to introduce me to you. I'm a former professor in geophysics, so I was involved in a very technological subject, but my dedications during the last years, since my retirement, is Tai Chi, and I have a Chinese Tao master who taught me this, and these 3 books which I'm publishing now in your house, they are on this subject. So now you would probably like to know what these 3 books are all about and why I have published 3 books. Well, I have 3 books and I tell you the names. One is called the Socrates Code. So you see, I'm talking about the Greeks. And the second book is called the Plato Code, which is also a subject which I talk about the Greeks. And the third is called the Lao Tzu Code. Now you may know that Lao Tzu is the most famous Chinese sage, and I learned very much about Lao Tzu thanks to my teacher Fang Fu and thanks to my own Tai Chi practice. So all these 3 books I owe to the knowledge I gained about Lao Tzu, thanks to my Tai Chi practice and thanks to the instructions I got from Tao Master Fang Fu. So now what is the Lao Tzu Code all about? Well, I concluded that the Greeks must have had an approach to understand the world in the similar way as Lao Tzu and Fang Fu teaches to his students. So what does it mean, similar way? There are 2 ways in this world to understand yourself and the world. I like to call the first one the conditioned approach. That means we are conditioned by our environment, by the education we get, by the school and university education, and so on and so on. So that means we believe what we are told, and we use this foundation of our beliefs to work and research and try to understand the world and ourselves. But Lao Tzu and also my teacher, they teach us that there is another very profound approach to understand the world. And I would never have thought before I started practicing Tai Chi that such an approach exists. And it is called Unconditioned Approach. That means there is a way to understand the world and the self without having any hypothesis, without any assumption, without believing in what we are told by our parents, by the teachers. We have to forget everything in a particular Tai Chi meditation exercise, which I will clarify, and try to perceive whatever we can do in a completely unconditioned way. Without expectations, we have to just exercise in a formless Tai Chi practice and see what happens. And the teacher gives you all the information in order to calm down and relax and try to get new sensations. So this is something most unusual, and of course it's a process that has to be gradually developed. You cannot get suddenly some new sensation. You have to exercise regularly to obtain this unconditioned knowledge. And the Greeks, I realize, call this unconditioned knowledge gnosis. We call it in our school Tai Chi knowledge. So it is not knowledge that we acquire in society, but knowledge exclusively obtained by self-observation during this Tai Chi exercise. And this knowledge can become as comprehensive as the knowledge that we can learn by going to university or studying or whatever. But it is a knowledge of a very different kind. It is the knowledge about yourself. So you recognize yourself, as Socrates says. You find out about inner sensations, and you are finding out about your own psyche, and you advance on an inner path, which in my school is a stepwise path of advancement. And I realize now, I come back to the subject of the Socrates Code, that all this knowledge which we can gain in the Taoistic school, my Uwe school, has been also reported about by Socrates. In other words, and all other Greeks. In other words, they followed the same path as Lao Tzu followed, and we Tai Chi practitioners in the school of Fang Fu also follow. That means all the Greek vocabulary which we learn in school, and there are plenty of words that have Greek origin, like astronomy, geometry, mathematics, arithmetic, psyche, theology. There are plenty of words that are of Greek origin. So these find all their equivalent in this unconditioned Tai Chi practice. So my big challenge was to prove that this Greek vocabulary has this unconditioned origin and corresponds to the Taoistic vocabulary. And this was a very demanding task to prove this, because first of all, everybody I know assumes that the Greeks talked about the conditioned world perception, that astronomy has to do with understanding the sky, and geometry is related to it, and theology has to do with investigating the teaching of God and all this. And I show that this is absolutely not true. So people will, as I found out in my research, people get really very shocked to learn that the truth is something different. And of course, I put myself also into a difficult condition by trying to convince my reader that we have a completely wrong understanding of the Greek ancients. So, and of course, you want to get also some recognition that you are on the right track and people are not considering you crazy if you come up with such a completely different interpretation of the Greeks. But I can tell you, I'm glad that I have already some philosophers who now also accept my point of view. And it is not easy to understand this unconditioned approach. Everybody will ask, well, what sensations do you have? What is the self-observation that you and Lao Tzu and your Tai Chi master or Socrates or Plato or Pythagoras were talking about? Well, maybe the easiest way is that I tell you that it is a sensation of feeling, for instance, the chi, which is a concept which is totally unknown to the Western world. It was brought from China, but my research showed that the chi is an equivalent of the Greek word psyche, which is commonly translated with soul. So, and the Greeks write that the experience of the psyche occurs on a stepwise path. That means you get, while you exercise over many, many years, a deeper and deeper understanding of your psyche. That means, now you will ask, what are these sensations? Well, I can only tell you, imagine that you have to explain an orgasm to a child. You cannot explain it, or can you? Probably the child can only understand you if the child one day is a grown-up and has experienced himself an orgasm. So in principle, I talk about sensations that unfortunately you cannot understand unless you have them. So this is a different subject to explain to people something which they cannot confirm immediately. So they will say, no, whatever you say must be wrong. But I can tell you, I offer many, many arguments in my book to explain to people who have no experience at all about Tai Chi what these sensations are, as far as they can be understood with words, by ordinary words, by everybody. So this is a difficult job which I have to do. But I have given now this book to a number of friends and colleagues, and they have no difficulty at all in understanding that whatever I talk about the Greeks is more convincing than what we read in the common books and thousands of books and school books about Socrates, Plato, and all these famous Greek persons. Now you may have the feeling that whatever I talk is something that you cannot benefit from, but it is not like this, because first of all, I think everybody should know that all the ancient Greeks did not talk about these things which we say they talked about, but they talked about something very different, which has a tremendous impact on understanding the roots of our culture. For instance, in the Renaissance, people claimed that they discovered the ancient Greeks and that they rediscovered their wisdom. And I tell you, this is absolutely wrong. So this is a knowledge which I think can benefit already everybody without knowing in detail what kind of sensations these Greeks had. But at the same time, they discovered many, many things which are of benefit for mankind in general. For instance, they discovered a cosmogony, that means an understanding of how the world was created, which is very different from what, for instance, Darwin is talking about. Darwin is considered to be the inventor of the evolution theory, but the evolution theory is completely conditioned. It makes hundreds of assumptions which nobody can prove. But the ancient way of understanding the creation of the cosmos and the self, called cosmogonia, which is completely unconditioned, gives you a much, much profounder understanding about the world creation. So you don't have to be a Tai Chi practitioner to appreciate all these things and confirm it. So I just gave you two examples that show that it's really worthwhile to read the Socrates Code. Okay, and now I come to the other two books, and I can be very short. The Lao Tzu Code gives you all the theory and what I learned from Fang Fu, and which is all discovered by this unconditioned approach. Now this may surprise you, that the unconditioned approach can discover also some theory. It can discover natural, unconditioned laws. Because all the laws that we learn in school, in mathematics, physics, they're all conditioned. We make all assumptions and we have to believe in them. But the unconditioned approach also discovers natural laws about the cosmos and the self, which you can articulate and formulate, to learn about all these things which you can learn about what you usually don't learn in school. So, okay. So I think you can benefit, but the Lao Tzu Code is, of course, let's say, the most comprehensive and most difficult book of the three. Now, what is the Plato Code about? Well, as the message is that all what we know about the Greeks is wrong, and the Greeks did not teach what we consider them that they taught. All what they taught is perturbed and disturbed and misinterpreted. And I think there are so many misinterpretations that it was worthwhile for me to write the Plato Code and uncover all these uncredible misinterpretations which most people would consider to be right, but they are wrong. So I criticize many famous interpreters like Alighieri Dante, like Shakespeare, like Goethe in this Plato Code, to tell you that they benefited from all this ancient knowledge, but they communicated to us in a perverted way.
So you say that our current culture is based on misinterpretation.
Exactly, this is what I say.
Wow, okay.
So what influenced our current culture is not the genuine interpretation of the Greeks, which are considered, or who are considered to be our fathers, but it is a wrong interpretation that has influenced the Renaissance, that has influenced the Age of Illumination, so it was a wrong interpretation. So I think it's about the times that we should find out what the Greeks really thought.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that I found a publisher who is crazy enough, like me, who is willing to publish these books.
Okay, let's see.
Thank you very much. It was an honor.